Today, I bring you the complete guide to flip knife diamond gems in CS2. I've already covered karambit diamond gems, so I definitely recommend checking that video out, and this is part 2 specifically for flip knives. This took a massive amount of time going through 1,000 individual patterns, but this video will cover everything including all the tiers, how to identify a diamond gem, the best patterns, and more. Once again, I do have to mention that this is the first and only video on these patterns, so all opinions and ratings were based on research that was done by me and those that help with the project. With that being said, let's get into the video. Diamond gem patterns come from phase 1 gamma Dopplers, which usually have a mix of green, blue, and purple, but certain patterns line up to give the blade a full blue finish that looks amazing in CS2. In total, there are 279 diamond gem patterns for the flip knife, of which 57 are tier 1, 153 are tier 2, and 69 are tier 3. I used the same tier system as blue gems to rank each of the patterns in 3 different tiers, with 1 being the best and 3 being the worst. If you're looking for a pattern and don't see it on the list, that means that pattern is not considered a diamond gem. I will explain the key differences between each of the tiers and show every single pattern that is in that tier. Let me explain how the grading was done. Each pattern was checked 5 times or more in different lighting types and on different maps to get very accurate rankings. From all 1,000 phase 1 gamma Dopplers, there was actually a ton of patterns that looked incredibly good but needed to be divided between the 3 tiers, so the criteria for each tier was incredibly strict. One important thing that I have to mention is that every single diamond gem on flip knives has a small green tint to it. There is no pattern that doesn't have this because the blue and green colors on the pattern sheet overlap, but I'll explain it more in a bit, so let's get into the actual tiers themselves. Let's start with tier 3 diamond gems. These patterns feature about 95% blue with 5% purple, but it varies from pattern to pattern. If the purple went past the halfway point on the pin at the bottom of the blade, it's considered tier 3. There are 2 rules that disqualify a knife from being a tier 3 diamond gem: if any green at all starts showing up beneath the purple, or if there was too much purple that goes past the bottom triangle that I'll show on the blade right here. So using those 3 rules, it's actually pretty easy to identify a tier 3 based on how much purple it has. Here's the full pattern list for every tier 3 flip knife that exists in CS2, and there's a total of 69 patterns that landed in this tier. Here are some examples, and I have to say these knives look really good, but having so much purple on the blade means there were other patterns with more blue on it, placing them in a higher tier. Next up, we have tier 2 diamond gems, and these patterns have about 98 to 99% blue on them, with 1 to 2% purple. This tier was for patterns that were incredibly clean, and there was a lot of them, so there will be variation between each of the patterns, with some looking better than others. If the purple was below the halfway point on the pin, that made the pattern a tier 2. For the most part, it's pretty easy to identify a tier 2, but some were very tricky. There are patterns that look insanely clean with less than 1% purple on them and seem like they belong in tier 1, and I actually started calling them fake tier 1s. These patterns have an absolute tiny amount of purple that is very difficult to spot and only visible under certain lighting, but here's why they landed in tier 2. The biggest difference between tier 1 and 2 is that tier 1s have absolutely 0 purple on them, not even a pixel. So if there was any amount of purple, including even a tint or a dot, they were placed in tier 2. Here are some examples of fake tier 1s, and I took a ridiculous amount of time analyzing fake tier 1 corners to get perfect rankings. All in all, there were 152 patterns that landed in tier 2, and this is the entire pattern list for flip knife diamond gems that received this ranking. As with every other tier, they will all have a tiny green tint on the tip of the blade that will change position from pattern to pattern. I can confidently say tier 2 diamond gems are some of the best patterns in CS2 and look stunning with their bright blue color. And finally, we get to the god tier patterns, which landed in tier 1. All of these are absolutely perfect and have 100% blue on them, without a speck of purple on the whole blade. They will of course have the green tint that is barely visible and changes location from pattern to pattern. Since all tier 1s are perfect in color, the main difference between each of them is dark spots, and it works exactly the same way as rubies and sapphires. Less dark spots makes for a cleaner pattern overall. After seeing all of the tier 1s multiple times, I will say that pattern 108 is the number 1 best flip knife diamond gem pattern in CS2, with perfect color placement and minimal dark spots. Here's the full pattern sheet for tier 1s, and the total came out to 57, which is a bit higher than the total for tier 1 karambits. These patterns show the full potential of flip knife diamond gems and look absolutely insane with CS2's lighting. They also pair really well with blue gloves like superconductors and overprints, giving you another color option to choose from besides your standard gem finishes. So, here's my full guide to flip knife diamond gems in CS2. I spent a massive amount of time working on this video, so if you guys enjoyed, consider subbing to the channel for more content like this. Valve hasn't touched gamma dopplers in months, so I'm fairly certain at this point that this finish will stay as is, but they can still tweak it in the future. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and see you in the next video. Peace out.